Perfect. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jane Woodward, who is going to introduce our presenters for today. Jane, go right ahead.
I am delighted to introduce Richard Engel and Marisha, right? Ramirez-Escareño. My Spanish was a long time ago. Richard has worked for 9 years at Redwood Coast Energy Authority, where he's the Director of Power Resources, overseeing administration of the Community Choice Energy Program, power procurement, and customer account management. That's a long combination. Previously, he worked for the Schatz Energy Research Center, where he developed hydrogen fuel cells and other advanced energy technologies, as well as developing clean energy programs at several Northern California local governments. He earned his BS in Environmental Resources Engineering at Humboldt State University, and also worked for local government energy programs in San Francisco, Palo Alto, and Sonoma. And we're happy to have you back. Glad you came back home. Marisha serves as the Account Services Manager at the Redwood Coast Energy Authority, where she oversees consumer service operations related to billing inquiries for the agency's Community Choice Energy Program. A Humboldt County native, she brings over 15 years of customer service experience with the local community, reflecting her deep commitment to serving residents with care and integrity. She joined RCEA more than a year ago and has since played a key role in enhancing and streamlining account services. She earned her BS in Business Administration with the concentration in Financial Accounting from HSU, equipping her with a strong foundation in both financial systems and public service. Thank you to both of you for being here, and I will turn it over to Richard to start it off.
And I'm actually going to turn it over to Marisha, who's really going to get things rolling. We're both
happy. A hot potato. Look out.
All righty. Okay. Can everyone see that well? All right.
Yes, it's fine. It's great.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Marisha, as Jane just introduced us, and this is Richard. Today, we'll be going over electricity, affordability, and rates. So the agenda, we're going to do an RCEA overview just so you can all kind of get a better sense of who RCEA is, as there is still a little bit of confusion in the community on how we relate to your electricity bills. And then we'll go over electric affordability and review it as an equity issue. And then we'll do what costs make up your RCEA customer bill, which is, I think, of great interest to everyone here today. And understanding that electric bill and how policy impacts the rates that you're paying, and RCEA's residential programs that you could take advantage of, and as well as tips for saving energy and reducing costs. And then at the end, we'll go for payment assistance and financial aid programs, and then we'll leave time for questions and answers. However, we'll pause periodically so that you can ask questions throughout the presentation. All right.
If you have questions that you want to put in the chat, you can do that and save them for later.
Great. Yeah, we'll check the chat. Well, thank you, Marisha, and thank you, Jane, for the nice introduction. This is Richard Engel, Director of Power Resources, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about our organization. Redwood Coast Energy Authority, or RCEA, is a local government agency, not a private company. We're set up as a joint powers authority. What that means is that we span across different local government agencies, much like the Waste Management Authority and Humboldt Transit Authority serve multiple jurisdictions, the cities and the county. We do the same. Our members include the Blue Lake Rancheria, the Yurok Tribe, Humboldt County, and all 7 of the incorporated cities in the county. Our mission is to develop and implement sustainable energy initiatives that reduce energy demand, increase energy efficiency, and advance the use of clean, efficient, and renewable resources available in the region. I promise I'm not just going to read the slides all the way through like that, but that I wanted to read that one because that's specifically our mission statement as adopted by our board. One of our main functions in Humboldt County is being your local electricity provider. So more than 90% of the homes and businesses in Humboldt County get their electricity from RCEA by choice. We are a community choice energy program. We give people that choice whether to participate in our program. For those who are taking their energy from us, we get cleaner and renewable electricity for residents and businesses. We focus on making that electricity affordable. We also have a lot of programs and projects focused on building local energy resiliency, and I'll talk more about that later on. We also provide customer programs, including rebates for energy projects that you might want to do in your own home. And importantly, as an alternative electricity provider, we keep your energy dollars local, so it's not sending that money off to shareholders somewhere else. The money stays here in Humboldt County to the greatest extent possible. We are governed not only by a board of directors representing all of those different jurisdictions that I mentioned a moment ago. We also have a community advisory committee whose members are appointed by the board of directors. And this group, the CAC or Community Advisory Committee, meets every 2 months and provides input and recommendations for the board of directors. They're kind of meant to be the voice of the community that help guide what we do. The money for running our program comes from electric ratepayer revenues. It's not tax dollars, it's part of people's electric bill. What we do is called community choice energy. It's the electric service that we provide. This is now a pretty widely adopted model in California. There are 25 community choice energy providers serving different communities around California. So we're the one for Humboldt County. We started doing this in 2017. We buy electricity on the power market and we build electric supply for our customers. People are automatically enrolled in our program according to the state law that allows community choice energy to operate. If you don't choose otherwise, you get enrolled in our Repower electric service, which is our base product that people get by default. You get electricity that's less expensive than if you were buying it from PG&E, and it's on the same bill as your PG&E bill. What we provide is not an additional or duplicate charge on your bill. It's just replacing a charge that you would otherwise be paying PG&E. PG&E is a partner with us. They handle delivering the electricity to your home and the billing functions. Both RCEA and PG&E provide customer service depending on what help you need. You can talk to either us or PG&E. We also have an alternative product that's called Repower Plus. This is our 100% renewable and carbon-free energy option that we've been offering ever since we first launched our program in 2017. We're highly invested in bringing Humboldt County a clean renewable energy future. We have, since we launched our program, been providing the highest feasible amount of renewable energy each year. In 2025, for the first time, we achieved a goal our board had set, which was by that year that we would be providing 100% of people's electricity from a combination of renewable sources and carbon-free sources. When I say renewable, I'm talking about sources like solar and wind energy and geothermal energy that are recognized by the state of California as renewable. Carbon-free is a different category. This includes things that are not categorized as renewable but are free of carbon emissions. Mainly for us, that means procuring hydropower as part of our portfolio. Nuclear is also considered a carbon-free resource, but our board chose from the outset to have a nuclear-free policy. So that's not something we go out looking for as part of your portfolio. We have another goal, which is by 2030, that Humboldt County will be a net exporter of renewable electricity, meaning we generate more than we use here, with 100% of it being carbon-free and renewable. But that will just be renewable. The goal by 2030 would be to not have the large hydropower as part of our portfolio anymore. The part about being a net exporter of renewable electricity, this is part of our strategic plan, which was last updated in 2019, so 7 years ago. And at that time, it was believed that by 2030 we would have offshore wind energy being generated off the Humboldt coast, and that was why we envisioned being a net exporter of renewable electricity. At this point, we no longer expect to be in that position by 2030. Looks like offshore wind is going to be considerably delayed beyond that. So I'm not sure that we can deliver on the net exporter part of that, but it's officially still a goal for RCEA. What we do get is wind. We don't have any onshore wind projects here in Humboldt County just yet, but we do procure some wind energy from other locations. We have solar, hydropower, biomass, and geothermal power. With renewable energy, we're able to reduce greenhouse gas emissions below statewide average levels. And we're collaborating and partnering with other entities to get new sources of energy and build local resiliency. I'll talk some more about some specific projects for doing that in a minute. At the same time we're doing all of these ambitious clean energy goals, we're also striving to keep our rates competitive and stable. So what kinds of projects are getting built? Locally in Humboldt County, it's an array of projects. We have a microgrid at the airport that's solar and storage. I'll talk about that a little more in a second. We've had, since we started our program, we've been getting part of our energy from a biomass plant in Scotia that uses waste material from the forest products industry. We have a couple of other projects under contract, that one of which is now fully up and operating. On the map here, it says Foster Clean Power A. It's in italics, which means future project, but actually that project did come online a few months ago and it's now fully operating. And it's actually larger than what's shown here. It just says Foster Clean Power A with 3 megawatts of solar, but we actually have 7 megawatts of solar and 2.5 megawatts of battery storage operating at that project just outside Arcata city limits. We're very, very close to completion of a solar project that's just outside of Hydesville. That's a 2 megawatt project called North Coast Highway Solar. And then we have contracts for projects that have not yet been built, a Hatchery Road project just outside of Blue Lake, and an energy storage project in Fairhaven at the site of what used to be the biomass power plant there. And then offshore wind is still up in the air today. The current presidential administration is not very friendly to wind energy, so they've been making it difficult for wind energy projects to advance, but there are 2 different developers that have leases in place with the federal government to develop offshore wind in areas off the Humboldt coast. And we're hoping by the mid-2030s to see construction on those projects moving forward. And outside of Humboldt County, we have some projects under contract. There's a hydroelectric project over in Shasta County, 5.6 megawatts. There is a large solar project down in Kern County, Sandrini Solar. It's a 100 megawatt project. So picture solar panels covering about 500 acres of land there. And that's enough electricity to provide about 1/3 of our annual electricity need for our customers. And a tracking system maximizes the output of that. There's also batteries that have been added onto that project, so it now has 92 megawatts of battery storage coupled with the solar. We have a couple of other projects under contract that are close to coming online. a tumbleweed battery storage project in Southern California, and a portfolio of geothermal projects in Nevada, some of which should be coming online within the next year. And an energy storage project in Sutter County. So this is the portfolio of projects we have under long-term contract, meaning 10 to 20 years duration. One project that we are very proud of, and this is the only one that's actually owned and operated by RCEA ourselves, is the Redwood Coast Airport microgrid. It's located up at the airport. You've probably seen the big solar array on the south end of the airport grounds. And it's not just solar and batteries, it's set up as a microgrid. What that means is when there are power outages in the area, the microgrid is able to isolate the energy grid within and adjacent to the airport and keep things running on a combination of solar and batteries. Depending on solar conditions, it can, if solar conditions are good, it can operate indefinitely. If solar is very limited, say in the wintertime, there are generators that can eventually be turned on, but the idea is to provide under all circumstances uninterruptible power for the airport operations. Also provides power to the adjacent Coast Guard station and the Humboldt County Animal Shelter. And we also included electric vehicle charging stations as part of that project. We've also done a number of other kinds of projects. One that's pretty high profile is we have a network of 37 operating electric vehicle charging stations throughout Humboldt County, and we're putting in more of them this year. These are pretty well distributed around the county. At the 37 stations, there are a total of 72 ports, meaning 72 cars can be charging all at the same time. We also partnered with the local rural fire stations and got a grant award to help them put in solar and battery storage systems. Some of these are mobile trailer mounted systems that can be deployed to different locations to provide solar and battery backup for resiliency when that's needed. We've also worked with the Hoopa Valley and Yurok Indian Housing Authorities on solar and battery projects for housing, including senior housing in their tribal locations. And we help out public agencies, including schools, with project management and technical assistance for their energy projects. A big launch for us in 2024 was establishing a new Northern Rural Energy Network, or NREN. This includes not only Humboldt County, but also other North Coast counties, Mendocino and Lake counties, as well as 14 counties in the Sierra Nevada region. So you can see in the map there, these two different regions that are united under this energy network. The purpose of it is to provide energy efficiency programs for rural communities, help them achieve cost savings and community resilience. Energy networks of this type have been around for years in the urban parts of California, and they fill in a lot of the gaps that otherwise are left unfilled by energy programs that utilities offer. So the energy network as a business model has been very successful across California, but the rural areas were not able to capture these benefits. And Humboldt is the core for this because RCEA that serves Humboldt County is serving as the administrator for the entire program, coordinating with partner agencies in the other counties across Northern California. So far, residential services under NREN have launched. The commercial programs are starting to become available now and for public agency customers. So we're seeing a rapid expansion of that program, offering more benefits to more sectors of the community. So we want to pivot now to talking about affordability. Because we know this has been on people's minds when they look at their utility bills. we're especially concerned about it as an equity issue and how it impacts lower income customers, because we know that lower income customers do spend a larger percent of their total income on energy. There's something the state has called an affordability ratio, and this is if you take the bill, the essential services, the utilities you have to pay, and you divide that by household income, not inclusive of non-discretionary expenses like, just your housing costs and other utilities like water. If you do that math, you get something called the affordability ratio. So a high affordability ratio is not good. It means you're unaffordable. So if you have an affordability ratio of greater than 15% for customers in the lowest 20% of income, that defines what's called an area of affordability concern. So here's a map of where those energy affordability concern areas are in California, according to their mapping they did of that in 2022. And you can see that most of Humboldt County is considered an area of affordability concern. So this is something that people in Humboldt County have to struggle with more than in other parts of California. And with that, we're going to pause for a moment and see if you have any questions so far. And then Marisha will take over presenting after we address any questions you may have.
Yeah, and maybe because we're screen sharing, we can't actually see the questions in the chat. So Jane, if you could let us know if there's any questions in the chat.
Sure, I can do that. I think that I have a question, among other things, that how do you get involved in these projects? Are you controlling them, or a group of people involved get together to put these projects together? Who funds them, etc.?
Mostly what we do is we issue solicitations, typically one or more a year, looking for energy projects. We always put a preference on local projects here in Humboldt County. But as you saw from the maps, some of the projects we end up with are not local. And then we do an assessment of all the offers that we get under that solicitation. And we pick the projects that look like the lowest risk and highest benefits. And we will negotiate contracts at the pricing that the developer has offered us. In terms of and those contracts are typically for anywhere from 10 to 20 years duration. So we're not actually owning the project, we're just executing a contract to buy the power that comes from the project. The one exception to that was, I mentioned, the microgrid, which was an RCEA developed project where we were, hands-on involved in the development of the project, and we got financing to own the project. With these other projects that you saw on the map, the money comes from our ratepayers, and it's not paid up front. What happens is the developer has to go out and get their own financing to build the project. And then once it's built, our contract calls for us to start, giving them monthly payments for the energy they produce. And we in turn, collect money from our electric ratepayers and use that to stay paid up on those contract invoices.
So how do you decide what kind of a solicitation to make? In other words, do you recognize there's a need for something in a particular area, and thus you put out a request for proposals? Is that how it works?
That's sometimes the case. When we first started our program, we knew that there were, 3 biomass plants existing in Humboldt County, and that looked like an easy win for us to procure this biomass power because it was generated locally, which was in keeping with our local procurement goals. It was providing, local employment and helping to manage a local waste problem of what to do with all that, sawdust that comes out of the mills. And so we issued a solicitation only limited to Humboldt County biomass power. So there were really only 3 companies that could respond to that, unless somebody wanted to build a new plant from the ground up, which would have been a more expensive proposition. In other cases, sometimes our solicitations are driven by having to comply with state requirements. The California Public Utilities Commission periodically issues a procurement order, and that's based on their estimates of how much new generation is needed to replace plants that are retiring and to keep up with growing electric load. And so they'll tell everybody that's an electricity provider in California, okay, here's your share. You have to go out and procure X amount of new generating capacity. So several of the solicitations we've done have been directly in response to these procurement orders from the state. In that case, we're more concerned about, just complying with that procurement order. So if we need to procure stuff outside of Humboldt County, we're okay with that. We still put the Humboldt County preference in the solicitation, but sometimes end up with a project that meets our needs and might be less expensive than a locally built project. So we do sometimes contract for those non-local projects.
So you do cooperative projects, or you find a project that meets the needs that we don't have, and you go outside and say, hey, let's do it together, or?
Well, it's a little bit more free market than that, because we are not usually specifying we want this project in this place. We're just saying we need this much renewable energy, and give us your best offer. And so we'll get sometimes a pretty diverse mix of offers. We might get some offers for wind power, some for solar power, some for battery energy storage, some for hydropower. And then we look at all of these side by side. Some of the analysis is quantitative, where we're looking at how much, just what the pricing is, how much that type of resource can be expected to generate. If it's an already existing project, we look at their historic generation. So we're kind of taking all those criteria into account. We're also and this part is a little bit more subjective, but we're also looking at, has this developer built projects successfully before, or are they a brand new company? Have they gotten in trouble with any of their projects they've built in the past? Have they been sued? We're looking at things like that to just kind of figure out, does this look like a good business partner for us to, get involved with? And also we look at, this project they're proposing to build, has it already gone through its permitting process, or is it, at least making progress on permitting? Have they got a financing partner lined up yet who's going to finance the project? Have they figured out how they're going to interconnect their project to the grid? That's a really important one, because there's usually a long queue of new projects that are waiting to connect, be it to PG&E or SoCal Edison or whichever utility company. And sometimes we can get a sense of if their interconnection is likely to, sail through or be delayed. That might influence our decision making as well.
Do you have a plan for what you're wanting to do, and what capacity and what form over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yes, we have. I mentioned before that we have a strategic plan. It's been 7 years since it was last updated in 2019. We are due for a reboot on that. So we are planning in the coming year to relaunch an updated strategic plan. And that involves going out into the community and holding public meetings specifically to get people's input on what they'd like to see in our strategic plan. We did a lot of that community outreach back in 2019. So that helps us get input and direction. And what we ended up with last time was a strategic plan that, said, we want to procure these types of resources, and we don't want these types of resources. So we also have, in addition to that strategic plan, we have an energy risk management policy. And this also lays down some ground rules for us. I mentioned that we have a no nuclear policy that's memorialized in that risk policy.
You have a question from John Clark. If we live in Humboldt County, is all electric power renewable?
Not all is renewable in Humboldt County, because here in Humboldt County, some of the power is being generated with natural gas at the PG&E plant on Humboldt Bay. We are not buying power from that plant, though. PG&E generates that electricity to distribute to what they call their bundled customers, which means the ones who have chosen not to be in RCEA program or in PG&E's program. For their procurement instead. So there is non-renewable electricity being generated in Humboldt County. Everything that we contract for that's generated in Humboldt County, however, is renewable.
And then Marla said, would you speak a bit to the constant messaging regarding, quote, fragile grid, end quote, and if all locations in the network you are showing to us are impacted by this aging grid, and if it bypasses antiquated equipment? Thank you for this presentation.
Sure. We talked about how RCEA is responsible for procuring electricity. We call this generation, the actual production of electricity. Our partnership with PG&E relies on PG&E to be the ones that transmit and distribute the electricity from where it's generated to the user. So that's something that's done by them. We don't own like actual, grid resources. We don't own the poles and wires that distribute the energy. So I really have to point you to PG&E on the fragile grid that Marla mentions. It certainly is a vulnerability the electric grid has today. It's not something that we at RCA have direct control over. However, we and other community choice energy programs like ours are becoming increasingly interested in what can we do to address that vulnerability that the grid has. Should we start actually owning transmission and distribution resources? There are a lot of municipal utilities in California, for example, the city of Redding, the city of Ukiah, the city of Healdsburg, some larger ones like Los Angeles Department of Water and Power that do own that transmission and distribution infrastructure, or at least the distribution part of it within their community. That's an additional level of investment. That's not something that we're doing currently, but it's certainly something that we consider, and it's in our strategic plan to investigate the feasibility of owning more of that infrastructure ourselves, which would be a liability for us to take on, but might help us solve some of these problems. Humboldt County, I think, when you look across PG&E's grid, we are more prone to power outages than other parts of the PG&E service territory because of our remote rural nature, and it's just harder to make sure every customer gets reliable electricity here. So it's a real problem that needs to be solved, all the more so locally.
Thanks for that thorough answer, Richard. I really appreciate it.
And Judith asks, pardon me, I've had solar for 20 years. My bill went from $60 a month to over $300. Is it true that I can no longer sell my excess back to PG&E?
We have a little bit of material that we're going to present about solar, so if it's okay, I'll defer on answering that question to when we get to the slide on that. If that's it for questions for now, I can hand things over to Marisha.
Righty. Okay. So now we're going to transition over to review the different pieces of what makes up your electric bill. So I'll be going over transmission and distribution, base services charge, generation, power charge and difference adjustment, and the franchise fee. So let's get into it. Alrighty, so the transmission and distribution, what is it? Richard just went over a little bit of how our CCA works and our relationship with PG&E, but how does that reflect in your billing? So what it is on your billing, what you'll see if you're an RCEA customer is that there's going to be a portion of your bill for electricity that goes to PG&E because they are the ones who own and maintain the poles and wires, which is what Richard just described. So you are essentially paying PG&E to transport that electricity from the grid to your home. Right. And as of March 1st of this month, 2026, there is a new implemented base services charge. And this is a flat charge that PG&E is implementing on the T&D portion of the billing, so on their portion to maintain the poles and the grid. This pays for grid access and maintenance, metering, billing, and customer service, as well as public purpose programs. So essentially speaking, even if you don't, turn the lights onto your home, there is always going to be costs associated with maintaining the poles and the wires, and this is what this fee is going to assist in paying for. So depending on if you're a care customer or a FARA customer or not enrolled in either of those programs, will determine what you pay every month for this fee. And so this is a flat fee, like I said, so most customers, unless you're enrolled in care or FARA or are on deed restricted housing, will be paying a monthly flat fee of $24 regardless of your usage. Alrighty, so next we have generation. This is what the charge is for. If you are an RCEA customer, you're going to be paying RCEA for generation, which Richard kind of went over a little bit of what that means. It's where your energy is actually coming from. So RCEA purchases energy for its customers, and of course we try to maximize and do renewable and carbon-free resources when we can. And so the generation portion of your bill is a separate portion from the T&D portion. So you will see this broken out on your bill if you are an RCEA customer. And I will go into that during the billing section. Next, we have something that's called the Power Charge Indifference Adjustment, and it's often referred to as the PCIA because that's a mouthful to say. This is a state authorized charge that appears on electric bills that pays for past power contracts PG&E signed before customers move to community choice energy. This ensures customers who switch providers still pay their share of their early contract costs or the earlier contract costs that were associated or that were procured on their behalf when they were PG&E customers. It's important to note that all customers, whether served solely by PG&E or a CCA, pay a PCIA fee. And I read that slide entirely because this is kind of the very pared down version of what we could come up with to describe the PCIA charge to you all. Alrighty, so next we have the franchise fee, which is a charge for using basically public streets and public properties to place and maintain electric and gas infrastructure. So all customers pay this, and it's a small portion at this point of everyone's bill. It's a very small fee. So next, I'm going to go over the billing, and for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to go over just a normal customer bill, which is TOU. So if you have specific like solar related questions and that type of thing, I will ask you to call us directly, and or I'm going to plug another community event that we're doing on Friday that actually is going to be in person at RCEA. So I will give you the details of that as well. So first, if you're a regular customer that doesn't have solar or anything like that on your home, you're going to have a regular looking bill. You'll likely be on a rate that's a TOU rate, which means that you will be charged for energy more or less depending on what time of day you use that energy. And so this is the first page of a regular PG&E TOU customer bill. And you'll see here that the charges are broken up by the electric delivery charges. And then you'll see the Redwood Coast Energy Authority electric generation charges. And if you have gas, you will see a gas charge as well. And then so next, if you are on a payment plan or enrolled in any type of program like CARE or FARA, so if you're uncertain if you've enrolled in that program or if it's still being applied to your billing, this first page is where you're going to see it. And so I've highlighted it there in green on the left where you'll see enrolled programs. That's also where you'll see if you are a solar customer, what solar plan you are on, or what program I should say you are on for solar. So understanding your bill. So beyond the first page of the bill, you'll have first the PG&E electric delivery charges. This is the details page for the transmission and delivery portion of your bill. So not the RCEA portion of the bill, if you will. So this is where you'll find what PG&E is charging you to deliver the electricity. This is where you'll also see the power charge indifference adjustment fee and the franchise fee. And I'd like to highlight, you'll also see on this page what's called a generation credit. This is what PG&E would have charged you if you were not an RCEA customer. So customers who opt out will have to pay that generation credit to PG&E. So essentially giving you this credit if you're a RCEA customer means that this is a credit applied because RCEA is going to charge you for that portion of the billing. So in this example, we see that the customer is getting a $90.60 credit because PG&E is not going to charge them that. And we'll move on to show you what base services charge will look like. So some of you may have already seen this on your billing, but it was implemented as of 3/1. So depending on when your billing period starts or ends, you may have not seen this yet. So this is why I created a mock-up example of what your billing will look like going forward on the PG&E portion of the bill. And the base services charge will be outlined like this, and it'll be above your energy charge usages. So in this example, it is more than that flat $24, and that's because a regular billing period is 31 days. And in this example, you'll know it's 33 days. So it's a bit more than that flat fee. And relatively so, if sometimes you'll have a statement that's less than 31 days, so maybe it's 29 days, the fee will be adjusted accordingly as well and will be a little bit less than that flat rate as well. Alrighty, so next we have the RCEA details page. So if you flip through your bill past the first few pages, you'll get to see what's the Redwood Coast Energy Authority electric generation charges. So this is where you will see what we charge you. So rather than getting that charge from PG&E, you'd get it through us. So what we referred to with that generation credit, this is what you'll be charged instead. So this is what RCEA is billing you for. And we are mandated by our board to be at a 0.5% discount off of our rates. And so if you're comparing bills, you would have to take in the PCIA and franchise fee into account in order to do like a cost savings calculation. Alrighty, RCEA is going to be visiting how it sets its rates, revisiting how it sets its rates. Currently, as I just mentioned, we're set at a 0.5% discount to PG&E's rates. That's what we're mandated by our board to be. However, we are reevaluating our rate setting approach, and we're currently going through a cost of service rate analysis, and based on this and the findings that we get from that, we'll be taking those to our board, and then our board will decide whether or not we're going to continue to be a % discount of PG&E's rates, or if we'll do a cost-based rates model where that would mean our rates would be determined by what it takes RCEA to run and operate. And you can stay informed on this and what develops if you attend our board meetings. And at those board meetings, public input is welcome. You don't have to attend them in person, you can attend them online. And so we encourage and welcome you all to attend those meetings if you have at all any concern about this, and or if you just want to give your input when it comes time to us presenting this information. Alrighty. So this was the community workshop that I said I was going to plug earlier in the presentation, where if you do have specific customer questions, we're actually going to give a similar presentation to this at that meeting. But what we're going to do differently is we're going to allow for an entire hour for our staff to be able to answer questions directly on site with you about your billing. So if you have specific solar questions, something is different on your bill, and you've been meaning to call us or PG&E, and or you have, and you just want to come in person to get more understanding of those questions, please visit us this Friday. We are going to be at 633 3rd Street in our board. And there is an RSVP link here. We encourage you all to RSVP and attend this meeting. Can I answer any questions on this or anything that's been presented so far? And Jane, again, if you could let us know if there's any questions in the chat.
Yes, there are. Does RCEA have access to PG&E distribution circuits in Humboldt County?
Access, meaning, I'm not sure that we totally understand the
Yeah.
question. We might need a clarification on that. I'm not sure if that's asking if we could be alternative operators of those circuits instead of PG&E, or
Diane, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, that is what I'm interested in, is having us have the ability to eventually take over distribution circuits with microgrids and widely distributed solar. And so I was just interested because they refused to sell their circuit in San Francisco, even though they were interested in trying to get the circuits. And so I just want to know if you have access to a map of those circuits, or if you have some idea of how to go about getting distribution circuits here in Humboldt County, because that would be really helpful for us. Thanks.
There is a publicly available map of the circuits that you can look at on PG&E's website. I think that I think maybe before the end of this today's workshop, I might be able to provide that link to Jane for her to share out. Or if not, I can provide it afterwards. But there is you don't need a login or password or anything to look at it. There's a section of PG&E's website where they have like a detailed kind of GIS type map that you can look at and zoom in on specific neighborhoods and things to see those circuits. It even has information on how heavily loaded the circuits are, so you can get a sense of, you know, what parts of the circuit have room to add more loads or more customer-based generation. So that information is publicly available in pretty good detail. As far as just acquiring, you know, the distribution grid, I would say at this time, it's not something that RCEA is actively working on. It's something we've looked into. It is true that PG&E and other investor-owned utilities are very resistant to you know, buyouts or takeover of their grid infrastructure. I know that some of the local tribes on the North Coast are also interested in ownership of grid infrastructure that currently is PG&E owned. So it's definitely a topic of interest right now. I will say that economically speaking, you know, customer per customer, the rural areas like ours are more expensive to serve than the urban areas where the customers are clustering closely together. So that's one concern if we were to, you know, take on municipalizing Humboldt County. You know, it might result in actually more expensive electricity than we currently have, just because you know, we're, I think, in a way getting a little bit of a subsidy from the more urban PG&E customers that, you know, because, you know, rural and urban customers pay the same amount per kilowatt hour, but the rural customers are, it's, you know, it's costing the utility more to serve them because it takes more miles of power line to reach each customer.
Thank you.
I think we can move on to the next slide then. So we're just going to talk a little bit about how policy impacts the electric rates that we all pay. And here are some different categories. I'll dive into a couple of these in a little more detail, but just to identify them. Generation costs are subject to policy decisions. There are two proceedings that the investor-owned utilities like PG&E are you know, involved in on a continuing basis. One of these is called the GRC, or general rate case, and that one looks at the cost of like the actual infrastructure that the utilities own, like power plants and distribution lines, And then there's another one called the Energy Resource Recovery Account, or ERA. And that proceeding looks more at like the variable costs that the utilities have to cover, like their fuels that they use for power plants. Together, those proceedings determine, how much rates PG&E is allowed to collect. Some other special categories, a really important one is wildfire costs. We'll talk about that more in a sec. We have a separate slide on that one. And then rooftop solar, we had a question about that a minute ago that I asked to defer to when we get to that slide. And then there's just rate structures that are different for different classes of customers. And then there's the investments that the utilities make in transmission and distribution, which are largely captured in that general rate case proceeding that I talked about that's overseen by the Public Utilities Commission.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
I failed to ask one of Marla's. If you change the model for how to charge, will we have any say? Will it remain a lower cost than PG&E's? Please say more about this coming change.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is where I encourage you to show up to our board meetings and or tune in via online to be able to submit public comment when we do present those matters so that you can give and weigh in your opinion.
You have those periodic meetings with PG&E when they're talking about rate changes. Is that how that works?
That's basically a matter between PG&E and their customers and the Public Utilities Commission. We monitor those, but we're not like an active intervener in those proceedings.
Well, one of the questions was, are you a nonprofit or a for-profit organization?
We're a government agency, so we are not for profit. But we're not a nonprofit in the sense of like a 501c3, nonprofit organization. But we're a government agency, so we are not for profit.
Thank you. Go ahead. Sorry.
Sure. Wildfire recovery charges, and I'll say this actually, the terminology can be a little misleading because this is as much about kind of prevention and protection as it is recovery. But the important thing to know is that this has become a really large part of our electricity rates, and wildfire costs have become the single largest driver of utility rate increases. This is all on the PG&E transmission and distribution part of your utility bill, not the part that RCEA charges. But our customers have to pay the whole bill, the part that PG&E charges plus the part that we charge. So we're concerned about this certainly. And the kinds of investments that are being made with Public Utilities Commission approval by the utilities include what they call grid hardening, which can mean things that just make the electric infrastructure less prone to wildfire damage. So this might mean doing more vegetation removal around power lines. It can include undergrounding utilities, which some people view as a panacea, just underground everything and then we won't have wildfires anymore. I will say that's an extremely expensive thing to do. There's some undergrounding that's taking place in response to wildfire risk, but it's a costly way to mitigate wildfire risk. We had a question from one of the participants about solar. It was Judith who asked if PG&E has stopped buying solar from their customers. It's not that simple. They're still buying solar electricity, as are we. What happened in the last few years is that the solar program, which used to be called net energy metering, has been relaunched under a different name, which is net billing tariff, or NBT. And it's less generous to solar customers than the old program was. The argument for making it less generous is that the original solar program was successful, but it came at a cost because by paying so much for solar generation, more than it was actually costing in terms of replacing other generation resources for the utility. It was resulting in a cost shift, meaning that non-solar customers were paying more for their electricity to make up costs that the utility was incurring by not charging its solar customers enough. This has certainly been very controversial and has been a discussion going on for years. We've already been through three different redesigns of the solar tariffs, and it continues to be litigated to this day. I think there was just a court decision in the last couple of weeks that upheld the current solar tariffs that are in place. But it's not as lucrative to be a solar customer anymore. If you do want solar on your rooftop today, you're probably better off including batteries along with the solar generation, because the batteries let you change the time that you're delivering any surplus solar energy onto the grid to the times of day when you get compensated a higher amount for it. So we are advising people to at least look into including battery storage if they're putting solar on their rooftops.
Well, my question also is, are all those contracts, the level 1, level 2, level 3, broken and they no longer apply? Or for the people who did put in solar under the level 2, still get the return on their investment that they had contracted for?
Yes, they do still get to stay in that program for however many years. It's typically 20 years.
It's 20 years, and so there is a legacy period. It's 20 years, and it's tied to the premise, not the owner. So if you're not certain because you're renting or whatever the case is, or you bought the home and you're not certain how much is left on that, you can always give us a call and we'll look into that for you and get those dates for you. Currently, yes, it's still tied to the premise for 20 years.
Oh, okay. So it's for anybody doing solar now that's new, that it pays to have a battery.
Yes, that was intended as advice for people that are looking at doing a new solar system, or if you're making really substantial changes to an existing solar system. There are detailed rules on this, but if you're making a substantial change to an existing system, it might trigger the new net billing tariff rules.
So if I have 8 panels and I want to add 2, does that dump me out of the level 2?
The details for that, you really need to check in with PG&E first, because the details for that is there. It's under their purview to tell you whether or not you're going to get moved to the other tariff. So you'll really want to work with them prior to making any adjustments to your solar system.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I think it's a 1 megawatt limit, Jane.
In terms of the number of solar panels or the number of additional panels?
No, it's not about panels. It's about the generation of electricity based on
any. And it's a percentage based off what you use. So it's very individual to everybody. So I would definitely recommend that people check in with PG&E and not rely on their neighbors' experience or anything like that to determine what to do on their own solar system.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was told that they count the time tied to the solar depends on when when the first set was put in. That's from Judith.
Yeah, so if you're expanding on that, definitely they're still going to count from the initial phase of when you implemented your solar system for that 20-year legacy period, yes. But you're only allowed to make certain changes to your existing solar system in order to stay within the current NEM program, if that's what you're under. Otherwise, you'll get moved on to the solar billing plan, which is the newest one. So that's why I definitely recommend checking in with PG&E before making any changes to your system.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Alrighty, so this slide was meant to share with everybody, to go over basically, we did this analysis. I'll caveat this by saying we did this analysis last year and we haven't updated it with new figures. But basically in this slide, you can see that over the past 5 years, now 6 years, rates have increased 80% since 2019. So although rates have recently gone down with the recent rate change this year, we can see that rate decrease is incremental in comparison to how much they've increased. So this is a area of concern for us. So this is just something we wanted to share with you all. So while people are like, well, rates gone down, why are my bills still high? You know, this is something that we want to point your attention to see that, yeah, rates have gone down this year, but overall, over the last 5 or 6 years, they've risen substantially more than they've gone down. So. Alrighty, so next we have the residential programs that we offer here at RCEA. So if you're an RCEA customer, we welcome you and encourage you to take advantage of these programs. So the first one is free energy assessment. So definitely if you're noticing that your usage is similar to what it's been in the past, but you're seeing, your costs rise or anything like that, or you're seeing your usage rise and you don't understand why because you're making or implementing changes and you're not seeing your bill being adjusted to those changes, we welcome you to call us. We have energy technicians that specialize in going over a phone assessment with you. So we make it really convenient. You don't actually have to come in, or we don't have to actually go out to you. We ask you a series of questions to sort of try and pinpoint why your energy usage is either increasing at an alarming rate. And we try to give you advice going forward. We have free energy efficiency kits that just for being a customer, we can mail you, you can pick up. And I think we've standardized these so that everybody gets the same thing. And there's lots of great products in there that help you remain efficient to keep those costs lower in the areas where you could, manage your usage. And then we, like I said, already mentioned the no cost consultations. We're doing that supporting and understanding your electric rate schedule workshop. We also offer an induction cooktop blending program. So if you're not familiar with what an induction cooktop is, it's kind of cool. If you currently have like a gas stove, but you're pondering the idea of switching to all electric, you can come to RCA and borrow an induction cooktop, and it kind of shows you what it would be like to work with an induction cooktop prior to making that investment, and you can see if it's something that you like. So we welcome you to take advantage of that program, and then we just really encourage you guys as our customers to call us if you do have any questions about your billing or any of these programs that you could take advantage of, because that's what we're here for. You're our customers, and we really like to serve you individually and make sure that we're able to help meet your needs on assistance. Alrighty, so the next one I'm going to go over is the residential programs money saving rebates. So we actually have a rebate program. So if you are looking to become more efficient and invest in your home, or things go out all the time and you need to just buy something new, we encourage you to look at our rebates that we offer so that when you're making those replacements, you can take advantage of our rebate programs and save some money there. And here's a list of all the rebates we have, and we also update our rebates online very frequently. So if you're in the market to even buy a new vehicle and that kind of thing, and you're pondering the idea of doing an EV, this one's currently not available, but if it is, you will check our website and it'll be on there whether or not it's available. Alrighty, and so some energy conservation tips. So I'd like to say that sometimes this matters to what rate you're on first. So definitely paying attention to that billing rate and that time of use that you're on. On your bill, it will say whether or not you're on time of use and where your rate is going to be the most expensive, what time of day. So it'll say Monday through Friday, 4 to 9, or it'll say every day at that time. So please pay attention to your billing, and if you're not certain, give us a call and we'll go over that with you. But these are just some overall general tips for energy conservation. So using long-lasting LED bulbs. shifting your energy. So some things like loading your laundry is going to cost the most. So we recommend not doing those at the most expensive time of day. Choosing energy efficient appliances when available, and then loading your washing machine and dishwasher to the max so that you're doing less cycles, and then choosing your water heater temperature just a little bit lower. Most of it's set to a standard temperature that you actually don't need it to go that high. So we recommend adjusting that if you haven't already. And then programming your thermostat rather than turning it off and on, and seal and insulate your home. So, a lot of times that backdoor draft will make a difference when the winter hits and we're turning on our heater. So paying attention to those things. Alrighty, and next is a list of financial aid resources, which if you are not familiar with these programs, these are all PG&E assistance programs that I fully recommend a lot of you get familiar with. Some of them are not all for low income. Care and FARA is going to be medical baseline is based on if you have a medical need, and PG&E actually lists the devices, the medical devices on their website. So for example, if you have like a CPAP machine, you can get a discount for that. So definitely log onto their website and see if the medical device that you use qualifies for that discount. There's the LIHEAP, which is the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program. REACH, Relief for Energy Assistance through Community Help. The Match My Payment program is a newer program and they still have funding in that. Last we spoke with PG&E, that's what they mentioned. And so I want to point your attention to this because oftentimes these programs are geared at low income, but this one is specifically for people that are 400% above the poverty line. So, where we might find ourselves like in that in between low income and middle class, where we often see that programs are not qualified for certain people that don't fall within those income limits, but still are having financial hardship. This is a great one because the Match My Payment program is a little bit higher than those low income thresholds. And I encourage you guys to look at the website to see what those income thresholds are for that. Often, if you haven't already qualified for Care or FARA, you can qualify for this one. So that one is going to be as funding allows, which is why I'm plugging it right now, because although they had funding in it recently, that could run out at any point. And then there's the AMP program, which is the Arrearage Management Program, and that's a great program as well, and it's also income qualified. So I encourage you to look online. If you are having trouble navigating on their website for any reason, you can always call us and we can email you the links directly. And we often know that sometimes people will have issues, logging onto the computer and that kind of thing. If you need to visit us in person, we can help you navigate to these and with our assistance in person at our office here in Eureka. Any questions on those?
There's a comment. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to get assistance with energy efficiency from RCEA, and I didn't know that. Thank you.
Yeah, we try to make it as convenient as possible, and that's why we do it over the phone. So, you don't have to physically feel like you have to come down and talk to us and explain everything. You could just pick up the phone, call it. And I believe we also have an interest form online that if you just submit the interest form, somebody will actually reach out to you from RCEA. But if you're more comfortable just making the initial contact yourself, you can call us at any point as well.
And there's another comment that's kind of interesting. You've presented a lot of information, yet I still do not understand how by adding another level of bureaucracy, that is the creation of RCEA and the staff to pay, the charges can be less. Also, discount today will likely be changed immediately as it is already in the near future in printed planning. That's interesting.
Yeah, I guess I would respond to like how we're able to walk that tightrope of having, at least historically until now, charged less than PG&E for electricity. I think maybe the answer there lies in us being not for profit, as you asked us to clarify earlier. So we're not, seeking to return profits to shareholders while, utilities like PG&E are doing that. So there's, part of what customers are paying when they pay PG&E is profit that goes into the pocket of the shareholders, and we're foregoing that.
So are your charges higher than PG&E's at this point?
We're still, we're lower. We're 0.5% below PG&E charges. Whether that continues to be the case depends on the outcome of the cost of service study that we're doing right now and what decision our board makes around that.
So I'll correct Richard and say that our rates are a 0.5% discount than PG&E. So anytime PG&E changes their rates, we track that and we lower our rates by 0.5% discount.
Yes, because I think we got notice that we were going to have a lowering of rates.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Do you know why, what percent and how that happened?
Well, so PG&E did lower their rates this year. And the reason for it was because they have those proceedings that I talked about, the ERA and the general rate case, and the Public Utilities Commission, in examining the records, determined that PG&E had overcharged in the previous year and directed them to reduce their rates to return money to customers.
But that's only a 1-year change, right?
Right, yeah, and PG&E rates move up and down, I mean, this is a large part of Marisha's job, and her team is tracking those rates as they go up and down and adjusting ours to keep that 0.5% discount in place. And sometimes we're having to do that 3 or more times a year.
Do we get sufficient representation at PUC meetings? Because my understanding is infrastructure costs are supposed to be come out of the investors versus out of the ratepayers. So how did that work out? Did we lose out on that when the investor didn't have to pay for the undergrounding?
I can't address that question specifically, like what the outcome was there, but I will say that we have a manager on our team who's a regulatory and legislative policy manager. So her job is specifically to monitor these things and to do advocacy on RCEA and our customers' behalf when that's warranted. And she has an intern that helps her out too. So we have, a couple of staff here at RCEA that are actively monitoring proceedings of the CPUC, and sometimes we have meetings with the CPUC staff to put forward our perspectives and advocate for our customers.
Then the other question is, who paid for all the costs of the wildfires caused by PG&E?
Ultimately PG&E, through some combination of their ratepayers and shareholders, are footing the bill for that. So that's where the money comes from. With CPUC oversight, they specifically approve or deny PG&E's applications for wildfire recovery for specific charges, including undergrounding. I want to go back and address one thing that I said I was going to look up, which I did, which is somebody asked about how the distribution system of PG&E is mapped. And there is a website you can go to, and it's a very simple URL. It's just grip.pge.com. So grip.pge.com. And GRIP stands for Grid Resource Integration Portal. So you can visit that website, and it has maps you can load where you can look block by block at what the electric distribution network looks like and how much capacity there is on each part of the network. It's pretty interesting.
That's great. Does anybody else have any more questions?
And I have one more slide as well to go over.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. We really want to empower you to kind of take charge of your bill and really be able to manage your usage, in the areas that you can. And so part of that is, making sure that you can review it and it's convenient to do that. So we encourage you to make a web account with pge.com if you haven't already. That way, if you do call us for assistance, we can review the billing with you at the same time. If you're our customer, we have access to your billing here. And that kind of forgoes you having to come in and review your bill with you in person. However, if that's what you're comfortable doing, we're more than happy to do that as well. You can come into our office at any point and we can review billing with you. You don't have to pre-print out your billing. We have it here. We can do that for you. So those kind of things, if it's easier for you, we can definitely do them, but we want to encourage you all to have access to your information at any point so that if you have trouble, you can call us or call PG&E to get started. And that's what we'd like to encourage you all to do for your billing. Alrighty, and I think that was the final slide, and we will continue to take questions if you have.
Are there any other questions? Let's see, what about the concern regarding AI storage centers and the increasing costs that will be going to all the customers and not just the businesses? Is that true?
It's certainly a concern. We monitor that, we're not aware at this time that there's any major data center development planned for our service area here in Humboldt County. We're only aware of one data center that's a pretty small scale one in Arcata. It's certainly more of a concern statewide though. Probably though less so in California than in other states. Both real estate and electricity are expensive in California compared to other states. And so when developers of data centers are deciding where to build them, they've been choosing places like Virginia and Alabama that have cheaper electricity and cheaper land, and generally not focusing too much on California. But there's going to be a certain amount of it. We're certainly hearing about areas like the Silicon Valley that are seeing a lot of data center development, and there's a lot of advocacy going on right now to make sure that those new energy users pay their fair share. And don't, foist those bills onto other ratepayers. I think that's, something that's getting a lot of attention here in California right now.
Is the Arcata data center actually consuming much energy? Has it been built out?
I've been wondering about that. I've seen them coming there and doing various things to that building for a few years now, and I'm actually not sure what the current status is of that facility.
But it's actually online as much as you know?
I don't know. I
don't
haven't
know.
heard any
It's a
noise
mystery.
coming from it or anything.
Who do we ask? Who owns it? Do you know?
It was made public when they got their permit from the city to build the facility. I don't remember offhand, but
Would the city of Arcata be someone they could ask?
yeah, or you can just look it up online. I think if you were to search for Arcata Data Center, I remember seeing some public information on it at the time they were developing the project, and the name of the company was public.
Interesting. Any other questions? Yes, no.
I put my hand up.
Yeah, that was it. Edge Connects was the company building the data center in Arcata. Marisha and I can't comment on the energy use of individual customers though, because that's private data.
Diane, did you have something you wanted to ask?
I just wanted to thank RCEA because since I put up my solar and totally electrified my home, including my vehicle, I have 0 charges every month from RCEA. So the charges come from PG&E, which is the investor-owned utility. The only thing public about it is it's on the public stock exchange. And so that's the enemy. That's where our increased costs are coming from. They're coming because they send us all kinds of messages and propaganda about how great they are, and they do capital investments that are real expensive, like undergrounding short distances. And they have a good rate of return and an ROE. So, my pension is invested in it because it's not risky, but it's so sad. My goal is to get rid of the investor-owned utility and have a publicly owned utility because that's where we save the 50% on our bills. So thank you, RCEA, for doing all the things you're doing to help us. It makes life easier for us, and I'm all for you. And I want to get rid of PG&E. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, we had our chance way back and didn't take it for the state to take it over. And they declined. That was way long ago, a number of years ago. And you also comment, pardon me?
I'd like to comment that really your energy bill is really tied to, usage and all of that. So if you do have solar and you are seeing charges and you have any concern, definitely give us a call. But really it's really directly tied to how much you're using versus how much you're generating in your solar, and everybody has a different solar array. So that can vary greatly from customer to customer. But if you have any concerns, please give us a call and we'll try to help address them.
And we really appreciate Diane's comments and praise of RCEA. We're glad that people know we're doing good work in the community, and also glad to hear that you look carefully at your utility bill.
Well, we appreciate your coming on board and giving us this information and addressing all these questions and appreciate the role you play in the community. And if there's other information you want to get out to people, feel free to continue to present these programs. I want to let everybody know that next Monday on March 23rd, Lori Dengler is returning to talk about the July 29th, 2025 M8.8 Kamchatka earthquake tsunami and the tsunami warning system. Of course, she's Professor Emeritus of the Geology Department at Cal Poly. And she's going to talk about the impacts on the California North Coast and explore what went right and what we need to work on when we have these issues. They aren't always little. So thank you so much for coming. And please join us again to sign up. You can sign up for the summer program soon. So we'll be getting that out to you in the near future. So if you have any comments or suggestions or want to thank our presenters, feel free. Thank you so much for coming. I love these reaction things. They're fun. You can do all kinds of fun things. You can send hearts. You can send things like that. It looks like looks like a cone, ice cream cone, actually. And then we've got rockets, all kinds of new toys. We've got balloons. They quit going up. Okay, guys, time to sign.
Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Stop the recording.
Okay, sounds good, Jane. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.